Hi, it's Anne. Thanks for stopping by. Well, it's letter of the week time. Our letter this week is the letter Y, randomly drawn. And after thinking about it a little bit, we're going to talk about yogurt today. More specifically, we're going to be talking about yogurt lids and how we can use those as craft supplies. I eat a lot of yogurt. I flip-flop between brands, but currently Oikos is my brand of choice. It has a little extra protein. I don't know if that's if you're brand loyal to your yogurts, or maybe you're vegan and you don't eat yogurt, but there might be some other sort of product that you enjoy that comes in a little sealed container with a little foil lid. These are handy too, like if you do watercolor. I'll probably save these if I'm doing watercolor outside. I'll put a little water in them. I don't save all of them because I eat a lot of yogurt and I can't save all of the containers, but most of the lids I tend to save. Let's look at a couple of quick ways that it's very easy to use these little foil lids in your craft projects. This is something I had left over from Christmas. And it's just a little die cut snowflake that, I'll put on a card or something like that. It was in with my embellishment stash. But all of this silver here is just one of these yogurt lids that I put through the die cut machine. They're very, very easy. The material is very thin. They take to cutting really, really easily. And they just add something, really nice. And they're, you would have thrown them away otherwise. They fit nicely into the whole ethos of junk journaling. What I like to do even more than die cut is to emboss them, run them through an embossing a folder. And you can end up with some really beautiful patterns just pressed into this thin foil lid. You can use this. These are great as background, maybe on a journal cover, maybe as a, little something to ground another image. But I thought I'd just take you through a couple of ways that I like to use my foil yogurt lids. I don't know if you can see here, but here is another one that was similarly embossed, but I like to rub it with a little bit of gesso, and I want to show you just how easy that is to do. Let me pull a little background page. I've been tending lately just to keep a small bottle of gesso here on my desk, because I use so much of it, but I use it in really small little dabs. And so I usually just use my finger as an applicator. And gesso is very much like white acrylic paint. It's sort of a primer. My experience is that it's a little bit thicker than an acrylic paint, at least the inexpensive acrylic paints that I tend to purchase. And it treats the surface of paper or canvas nicely so that it takes to other sorts of media. And I just rub a little bit here and then leave it to thoroughly dry before I do something else with it. There we go. And it works really, really nicely on a metal surface like this, and lets you put some ink or something else on there in a way that where it's really going to stay. So I'm going to set this aside. One thing I've learned about gesso, particularly on metal, is that you don't want to touch it before it dries, because it'll tend to kind of pull up like it's a skin. So I'm going to set that aside. This one clearly has already dried. So let's see. Do I want to give this? I think I might want to give this a little bit of a color treatment. So I'm going to pull in a little bit of distress ink here and just a little sponge. Get a little blue on there. And just rub lightly on this embossed surface. Now, if I want to, I can spray it with some water. and let that ink run down into some of the crevices. This one I think I'm going to kind of leave because I'm going to punch something out of this embossed yogurt lid. Can you believe how beautiful that looks? And you can, the thing, even, I find even with the gesso on top, there's enough of that metal that shines through that you just get a sense of the metallic nature of the material, even though you've covered up a lot of the metal. So it's different. There's a different look than if we had done the same thing with paper. What about if I used a punch here? Because there was a little bit here that didn't get embossed, and so it's not a flawless specimen. But I want you to see how nicely, is this, yeah, this is the 2-inch punch. How nicely you can create a punched image with a yogurt lid. A little bit there, didn't want to cooperate too much, but that's okay. It could easily be trimmed up with some scissors. And if you're worried about sharp edges, I mean, this is such a thin foil that it doesn't seem to be that sharp. You know, I'm running my finger against it now. I mean, I don't want to be the, you know, the advisor on safety standards in your craft room. You know, certainly we're very careful with everything that we know is sharp, but I will tell you that this isn't like the metal flashing that, you know, is on your roof or anything like that, where a little scrap of metal could be super sharp. You handle any kind of metal, just like, you know, tin foil in your kitchen, you handle carefully. But I think you don't need to worry about it posing a great hazard. A little bit of the surface treatment that's on the back of this particular piece of yogurt lid that was sticking out there. But how nice is that? What about if we put this on, if we wanted to put that on a tag like that? I like that. I feel like it needs to be set off a little bit, so let's see how it takes to the vintage photo inking around the edge. That looks nice. I think that's going to stand out on this sort of icy blue tag as a lovely little embellishment. I think I could put it just like that, and that'd be nice. We do want to use the proper glue. I'm going to use my 3-in-1 glue. And you know, as long as I'm doing this, why don't I cut a couple of smaller ones? I've got enough here. This is this little 1-inch punch, and do I have a 3/4-inch punch? Yes, I just don't want to waste any bit of this yogurt lid. They're just easy, you know, they store perfectly nicely. They're easy just to scrub up after you've opened your yogurt. I like having these 3 here. And that little bit of vintage photo around the edge. There. Yeah, that looks pleasant. I could add a little more color in there, I guess, but I don't really think I want to. I think I might want to bring in a magazine so I can minimize my potential for mess. And the beacon glue, because this is a, it's still a metallic surface, the beacon 3-in-1 or Fabri-Tac is going to be nice for this sort of purpose. And then we're going to look at a few ways that we can kind of make some little dangles. I'm not really a big dangly gal for off the, some people put them off the spines of journals. If that's you, you might really enjoy making some tassels. I like some tassels that I've made, but I tend to make more fabric tassels than spangly tassels. However, I have found, particularly for the small pieces of yogurt lids, they can make some really nice little spangly embellishments. So we're going to look at that. There we go. Yeah, and that 3-in-1 glue holds that down very nicely. But these are still, this is still a thin enough material that it doesn't bulk up the thickness too much. And I don't know if you can see, but there's just a really nice gleam from that metal that comes through from that yogurt lid. My instinct is I want to add another label, like another layer, like a little jewel or something in the middle. However, I'm mindful of the fact that we're going to be writing on the back of this tag, so I don't want to add any thickness or anything that's going to make it difficult to write. I think I'm just going to enjoy this beautiful surface here of that yogurt tag. Let's look, though, at some of the spangly, dangly things we can do. I have a few things set aside here. These are some from a different piece. This is one that I didn't put any gesso at all on. I just punched it out and used, on this one, I just ran over the embossed foil with an alcohol marker, and the same with this. That doesn't, a little bit hard to see on that busy background. But you can see how this makes a nice little dangle. What I tend to use for if I'm going to do a project like this or add an embellishment like this, I tend to use little jump rings, just those little tiny metal rings that you get in the jewelry department. Used to be Joann's, R.I.P. Joann's, but you can go to any craft store or supply house and find these little jump rings. This is a handy little set that I have that has about any size I need, but it just gets things to dangle a little bit more freely than if we joined them right through the hole that we punch in the little disc itself. And then these little bulb pins are really handy. Let me put this through this jump ring, and here's a tag. These are kind of nice to add to the tag topping embellishment. There we go. And these little bulb pins, they act just like safety pins. And doesn't that add a nice little bit of fanciness to this card? And it doesn't add, you can just move it out of the way if you're, writing on the back, and then it gives something kind of nice and interactive. It's almost like it's an earring that's dangling off the top of that tag. So a fun way to use little discs that you've punched out of a yogurt top. Other food products, our coffee cans tend to have that kind of vacuum seal on the top, and so I generally save those. They're larger circles. Butter, or your buttery spreads can have that same sort of topping. You might have some in your recycle bin right away, or right now even. This one I thought turned out really cute. These are, the same as, these small punches that I did here, but I just you know, like here, I just glued a little bit of a jeweled embellishment, here a pearl, and I just threaded 3 of them on jump rings through a blue safety pin onto a piece of lace. And that's, you know, something that could go, you know, if I hadn't, it could just glue onto the top of a tag like that, and that'd be nice. Let's look at one more application. And here is a tag that is pretty neutral. I've got, let me see, is this dry yet? Nope, that isn't quite dry yet. I'm going to go to, this is actually at the top of a coffee canister, but it's basically the same material as the yogurt. And I did a little bit of distressing here with my vintage photo, just across the top. There we go. It's had a little gesso on it. And then that ink. So I was thinking, what about if I used that as sort of a background for an embellishment here? That could be kind of nice. Or I've been wanting to use this for a while in a book journal. This is something I cut out of a brochure I picked up at the library from one of the library services. And I loved this, all the roads leading to this book. And I was wondering, what if I put it behind that little open book? I feel like I want some more color on here though. So let me get into my darker distress ink and see if we can make that color a little more distinct, because I want a little more contrast, but I still want, whoa, okay, that's nice, but I still want that metallic property to be showing through. This is Scorched Timber, which is almost black. How does that look? Yes, that shows up so much better. Okay, let's glue this guy down. And when I was gluing those little jewels on the small circles that I used for the dangles, I adhered those with a little dab of the 3-in-1 glue as well. Tell me if you like to craft with some of these food packaging materials. They're such a gift, I think. I'm using a piece of an old t-shirt to press this down because I thought in case there was moisture that was still in that distress ink, I wanted to have it have a minimum amount of exposure to my fingers. Oh, doesn't that look nice? I love that it's all neutrally, but everything, you know, goes up to that centerpiece, and we've got that beautiful metallic background for that book. I'm going to put a little bit of 3-in-1 glue on this portion because it's going to be adhering to that metallic surface. And then I'm going to use my art glitter glue for the rest of this little brochure image. Yeah, there's just almost no piece of paper that comes into our lives that we can't that we can't use for a craft supply, is there? There we go. Oh, this will be really nice for one of the book journals that I'm working on. And something that just is so special about that metallic surface from the yogurt lid. Oh, I love that. Can you see it? Look at that little bit of shine. It just makes something kind of magical about that book image. So there you have a few ideas of how you can use the humble yogurt lid. And that's a nice little unconventional supply to use for the letter Y this week. What's going to be next? Let's have a look. Let me bundle up my supplies here first, and we'll write down what we've done for the letter Y. And today, as it airs, is the 6th. And yogurt. I'm going to put yogurt lids since it's not the yogurt itself we're using. I did use yogurt for a quasi-craft or craft adjacent project years ago, and I still, it did not go well. I saw on Pinterest somewhere years and years ago that if you took a terracotta pot and coated it with yogurt and set it outside for like 3 weeks or something, it would grow some kind of moss. The live cultures in the yogurt would react with the terracotta, and there would be an interesting moss patina. Guess what? Did not work very well, and I wasted like a cup of yogurt, which made me irritated at myself that I fell for that one. So be careful what they tell you what to do on Pinterest, but very low risk here if you just want to use the lid of your yogurt. All right, what kind of unconventional trouble can we get ourselves into next? Are we about halfway through? What is going to be our next letter? M. This should be easy, but I have quite a history of making things more complicated than they need to be. So we'll have to stay tuned to see what the M is going to be next week. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me for this week's letter of the week, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.